Shalom everyone. We are continuing our limud of Sefer Yechezkel. We are up to Perek Yud. We are in the middle of a long nevuah where the Navi was miraculously transported from Bavel to the Makom HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. He sees the Tayevais, the abominations and sins. He sees the angels who are given power to be mashchis and destroy. And even though this is 5 or 6 years before the Churban, prophetically he sees that great destruction. And now we continue with his description of what he saw in this miraculous journey. Again, a machlokas, is it a dream, out-of-body experience, or was he physically there? So remember, it's a little confusing because kruvim are described in two different ways. We have the kruvim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and God moved from those kruvim to the miftan habayis, to the threshold. But we also have the merkava, the chariot of God. Now in Perek Aleph, that was described by 4 angels that are called the Chayos HaKodesh. The holy, it doesn't mean holy animals, the holy living creatures. And the 4 angels have at their base wheels, which are also angels, that are called ofanim. So the Chayos HaKodesh are carrying the Merkava, and they in turn are supported by the ofanim. Here, the Chayos HaKodesh are also called Kruvim. So don't confuse these with the Kruvim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. These Kruvim are like God's chariot, because God is gradually withdrawing, that is waiting in the courtyard, in the Azorah. So now Yechezkel is going to repeat a lot of the description that we already saw in Perek Aleph of the Merkava of Hashem and the Kisei HaKavod. Again, this is something we're not allowed to really dwell. It's not in our Madrega to understand, but we'll just go over the very simple pictorial description of what the Navi is seeing. And that Bichlal doesn't correspond to its reality. That is simply how the Navi's mind processes and imagines spiritual forces. V'era, v'hine el harakia asher al rosh hakruvim. There is on top of the kruvim, which were called Chayos HaKodesh in Perek Aleph, a rakia, like a sky. And on top of the sky, there's Even Sapir. There's like a sapphire throne, Kemare Demus Kisei Nira Aleim, that resembles a throne. A rakia and a throne. But there's not yet the Demus of Hashem, because Hashem's not there yet. It's kind of an empty chariot, an empty car, because the Shekhinah just moved from the Kruvim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim to the Miftan Habayis. But Hashem does, from the Miftan Habayis, does give an instruction that's Nogeya, the Chayos HaKodesh. Vayomer el ha'ish lavush habadim. Hashem, from the Miftan Habayis, issues a command to the man who is dressed in linen. He is the one that has the Keses HaSefer. Vayomer. And he says, Bo el binos legalgal el tachas likruv. So here we have a change in vocabulary. In Perek Aleph, the 4 Chayos HaKodesh that were bearing the Kisei HaKavod are called Chayos, and the wheels by which they move are called Ofanim. Here, the vocabulary is changed. The Chayos HaKodesh are called Keruvim, angelic figures, and the Ofanim are called Galgal, which also means wheel. Ofan and Galgal are in any case synonyms. Why there is a switch in the vocabulary, I do not know. But apparently, since the Chayos HaKodesh are angels of fire, there are hot coals, in the spiritual sense, between the Chayos and the Ofanim, between the Kruvim and the Galgalim. And Hashem says to the Ish Levush Habadim, put your hand between the Galgal and the Kruv, and fill your palms with gachalei eish, with hot coals from under the kruvim, uzareik aloir, and throw these hot coals onto the city. Destroy the city, destroy the mikdash, destroy the city with these gecholim. V'yavai li einai. And the ish lavush badim came in front of my eyes, and he was going to do this. But what happened was slightly different. V'hakruvim omdim miyamin labayis bavo ha'ish. The kruvim, these are not the kruvim in the Kodesh HaKodashim. These kruvim are the Chayos HaKodesh, God's chariot. They are to the right of the house, bavoish. In other words, as you would be walking towards the Heichal, the kruvim were to your right side. V'hanan, the cloud of glory of Hashem is filling the whole Azara, even though the Shekhinah itself is by the Miftan, the threshold of the Heichal, but the Anan is filling the Chatzar HaPnimis. And we already said, actually, Vayarem kavayid Hashem me'al hakruv al miftan abayis. We've already said that the glory of God had left the kruv. This is not the kruv of the Merkava, but the kruv in the Kodesh HaKodashim, to the threshold of the Heichal, or the Kodesh HaKodashim. Vayimale habayis es ha'anan. The Heichal was filled with the cloud of Hashem. So there actually is a little stira here, because the pasuk before says the whole Chatzir was filled with an Anan. Here it says the bayis was filled with an Anan, but the Chatzir mala es noiga kavayid Hashem. The Chatzir was filled with the brightness of the glory of God. So it's not, again, we don't really know exactly the difference. The pasuk seems to have said the Anan was in the Chatzir. Now the pasuk says the Anan is in the bayis, and the Chatzir has a noiga, a radiance. But be it as it may, the Shekhinah is not there yet. But v'kol kanfei hakruvim nishma Chatzar achitzayna. But the chariot is ready. It's almost like it's revving up, and the flapping sound of the wings of the kruvim could be heard all the way to the outer courtyard of the Harabayas. Kekail, Kail Shakai B'dabrai, and it was like as majestic and as fearsome as the voice of Hashem. So, Vayehi, Bitzavoso eso ish lavush abadim lemor kach ish eish mi benos lagalgal mi benos lakruvim. And behold, when Hashem commanded the man dressed in linen to take fiery coals from between the kruvim and the galgalim, chayos hakodesh and the ofanim, same thing. Vayavai vayamod etzel ha'ofen. So the man that is the malach, that is lavush badim, is standing next to the wheel. Now here it goes back to the older term ofan, rather than galgal. Again, the Rishonim say it's synonymous, but there must be some reason why the lashon changes. So here, now listen to this. Although the levush habadim was instructed to take the coal, he is not the one who actually did it. It says, "Vayishlach hakruv es yadai mi beinos lakruvim elo eish asher beinos hakruvim." One of the four kruvim themselves stretched his hand downwards to take the coals, and he gave it into the hands of Levush Habadim, Vayikach Vayetze. Vayera lakruvim, and you could see in the kruvim that they had, as we said before, hands under their wings. So Chazal basically say all of this is a getter of Midas HaRachamim, because as you pass a coal from hand to hand, the coal gets cooler, it loses heat. So instead of the Malach Gavriel, who is Levush Havadim, is actually the Malach Gavriel, taking the coal when it's hot and throwing it on the ear, which would have represented total hashchasa, it goes through the Kruvim first and then to Gavriel, and in that way the hashchasa of Am Yisrael is not going to be total because the coal cooled down. The Medrash also points out that Gavriel is essentially holding on to this coal for 6 years because he gets it in the 6th year, and there's no Chorban until the 11th year. So there's 6 years of opportunity for the coal to cool down. So this whole Maisa is a symbolic representation of Hashem's Rachamim. If you actually pay attention to the Kinais, you will actually see that these Midrashim are referred to in the Kinais. So the Kruv took his hand, etc. Okay. Va'era. And now we have a few psukim. Yechezkel is going to describe their Merkava, and much of this will be identical to the description of Perek Aleph, but there'll be some very, very important differences. Va'era, and behold, v'hine arba'a ofanim etzel kruvim. Each of the kruvim, which were called Chayos HaKodesh, has a wheel, an oifan. Now here it's called oifan. Before in Perek Aleph it was also called oifan, but before in this Perek it was called galgal. So I don't have the pshat. But each one, etzel kruv echad, v'oifan echad, etzel kruv echad. Umara Ifanim. Now the Ifanim themselves are not just wheels, they are actually angels in and of themselves. And the appearance of the Ifanim, Ke'ain, Even, Tarshish, was like the jewel that we call Tarshish. And the jewel of Tarshish was a bluish, sapphire-like color. Umareim demus echad liarbatam. And all of the 4 Chayos HaKodesh were identical. They had 4 faces, but all of them had the same 4 faces. Kasher yia oifen b'toicha oifen. And once again, the wheels were a double wheel, an inner wheel and an outer wheel, because that way, as the Merkava moved, no one ever turned, meaning these Chayos HaKodesh were capable of moving forward, back, side, because they had a face facing in every direction. So they never had to turn their face. They would move in the direction of each individual face. And as a result, since we didn't want a wheel to turn, there was one wheel that went forward and back, and another wheel that went to this side or to that side. I'm not exactly sure, as not being an engineer, I can't picture it that well, but the purpose of Eifen b'toich Eifen is that you wouldn't have to pivot. And again, this was basically the description in Perek Aleph as well. B'lechtam al arbas rivayim yelechu. They can go in any 4 directions. Lo yisabu b'lechtam. They didn't have to pivot or turn. Ki hamakam asher yifnei ha'reish achrav yelechu. They could move in the direction of the face. Because there were 4 faces, they could move in the direction of a face. Lo yisabu b'lechtam. They would not have to turn. V'chol b'saram, and all of their flesh, v'gabeim, and their backs, v'deim, and their hands, v'kanfeim, and their wings, and the ifanim, and the wheels. Muleim einayim saviv, they seem to be full of eyes. They see everything that goes on in the world. Li'arbatam ifaneim, and all 4 had these wheels. And now Yechezkel points out, Leofanim lahem kari agalgal biyaznai. And the word, what I described as Eifanim, I heard them use the word gal. V'arba panim liachad. And each of the Chayos HaKodesh or Kruvim has 4 faces on every side. Pnei ho'echad, one face is the face of a cherub. Pnei Hasheni, Pnei Adam, one face is the face of a person. Hashlishi, a 3rd face, is the face of a lion. And the 4th face is a face of an eagle. Now here, Pasuk Yudalid is the major, major difference between the vision of the divine chariot in Perek Aleph and the division of the divine chariot in Perek Yud. In Perek Aleph, we are also told that the Chayos HaKodesh had 4 faces. One face was a shore, an ox. Another face is a person. Chazal say it was the face of Yaakov Avinu. The third is an aryeh, a lion. The fourth is an eagle. So Adam, aryeh, nesher are exactly the same. What changed? In Perek Aleph, one face was the face of a shore. In this Perek, it is nepach. It is no longer the face of a shore. It is the face of a cherub, which is an angelic child. The Gemara explains that Yechezkel himself was mispalel, that the chaya should change from Pnei Shor to Pnei Kruv, because Ein Kategar Nasa Sanegar, the Jewish people in Golos need Rachamim. And the different faces of the Kisei HaKavod are ways that our tefillos come up to Hashem. But the Egel, the shore, the Egel is a Makatreg. A Makatreg cannot be a source of mercy. So it was Nishapech to a Kruv. Now the Gemara explains a Kruv itself is a human face. It is the face of a child. So what is the nafkamina between the face of a Kruv and the face of an Adam? So the Gemara says, Pashat, Ape Zutre v'Ape Ravreve. One is a child's face. One is an adult face. So 2 out of the 4 are human faces. There's Nesher and Aryeh, and there's child and adult. And both child and adult is a source of rachamim. The child is a source of innocence. The adult is the source of Torah and mitzvahs. So now, basically, this is lahavdil. It's like a car which is revving up its engines, but the passenger is not there yet. Hashem left the Kruv in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He's in the Miftan Abayis, but now he's going to go on his chariot and leave the city. So the pasuk says, pasuk Tesvav, Vayeromu Hakruvim Hiachayah Sheyusiv in our Kvar. The Kruvim are getting ready to lift up, and this is what I saw in the river Kvar, Perek Aleph. Ubelechas HaKruvim Yechu Eifanim, and when the Kruvim leave, the Eifanim go with them. Etzlam Uveseis HaKruvim Es Kanfeim Larum Meyal Oretz Lo Yisebu Eifanim Gam Heim Etzlam. And when the Kruvim begin to fly and leave the ground, the Eifanim go with them. B'yamdam Yamaydu, when the Chayai stand still, the Kruvim stand still, the Eifanim stand still. Uvarumam, when the Chayos or the Kruvim move, Yairumu Osam, the Eifanim get lifted up with them. Ki Ruach HaChaya Bahem, it is the spirit of the Chayos HaKodesh in the Eifanim. So whatever the Chayos are doing, the Eifanim respond. And now, Vayetze Kavod Hashem Me'al Miftan Habayis. The Shekhinah left the Kodesh HaKadoshim to the threshold of the Heichal. It now leaves the Heichal, and it goes on the throne on top of these Kruvim, the Chayos HaKodesh. Now that's the Pashut Pshat, that the Kruvim here is the Chayos HaKodesh Kruvim, because the Shekhinah is getting ready to leave. The Gemara, however, seems to learn that this refers to the Kruvim of the Aron HaKodesh, that after the Shekhinah left, it went back for one last connection. One last sad, like, you're leaving your house, but you go back to look at it one last time. So that is how Chazal learned, but it is true that the Pashut Pshat is, these are the Kruvim of the Kisei HaKavod, because that's the next pasuk. Vayisu HaKruvim es kanfeim. The Kruvim then flap their wings. Vayiraimu min haaretz, and they are lifted up from the ground, li'einai, in front of my eyes, Yechezkel says, b'tseisam, v'ofanam lumasam, and the Ofanim are with them. Vayamai Pesach Shar Beis Hashem Akadmaini, and it goes all the way, because the Shekhinah is going to leave by the east gate of the Azorah. That's the main gate. That's called Niknor's gate in the Bayis Sheni. It did not have a name in the Bayis Rishon, but the Merkava is lifting up, going towards the eastern gate of the Azorah. And here it is not just the Kruvim, but Kavod Elokei Yisrael Aleim Milmala, the glory of Hashem is above. And again, Yechezkel emphasizes, this is all that I saw in Bavel. And I know that what I thought were Chayos are actually also Kruvim. Arba Panim Liachad. Again, why he repeats this, I don't know. Each one had 4 faces. Arba Kanafayim Liachad. Each one had 4 wings. 2 on the shoulder level and 2 at the bottom half of the body. And they had the image of hands under their wings. And the face is what I saw at the river of Kavar Mareim. And when they moved in the direction of a face, because they didn't have to pivot. They could move in any direction. They had a face on all 4. Now, this is the end of the parak. We still haven't finished the nevuah, but the purpose of emphasizing this is the same thing that I saw, a Nahar Kavor, is actually an idea of chizuk. The Shekhinah that I saw leaving the Mikdash is the Shekhinah that I saw in Bavel. So when we go into Golus, the Shekhinah is with us. And therefore, in spite of the Chorban, in spite of the destruction, in spite of the Golus, Hashem has not abandoned us. What I saw leave the Mikdash didn't just leave to go back to Shemayim. That is what I saw on the river Kavar in Bavel. So that's a very important point, and that is why the Navi says it more than once.